The View hosts have got themselves into hot water again after they did the very thing they purport to be against, undermining women's success. Joy Behar stunned viewers when she said Donald Trump's press secretary, 27-year-old Caroline Leavitt, only secured her position because of her good looks.
I think she's probably been put in there because, according to Donald Trump, she's a 10. You know that's what it is.
I want to be clear, though. It's not her first job. It was her first press briefing. She worked in the previous Trump administration.
The comment was bizarre, especially coming from Joy Behar, who is as woke as they come and positions herself as a champion of feminism. This online commentator said, disgusting Joy Behar of The View accuses Caroline Leavitt of being hired only because Donald Trump thought she was a 10.
You think you know The View? Think again. What you see on screen is just the tip of the iceberg, because behind the smiles and heated debates, a full-blown crisis is erupting. Whispers are turning into shouts, and sources are leaking details of panic and infighting at ABC. What sparked this internal meltdown? It's all tied to a single interview, one guest appearance that has unleashed a legal nightmare and sent The View into damage control. Forget the usual hot topics. This time, The View is the hot topic, and the stakes are higher than ever. We're pulling back the curtain to reveal the explosive situation unfolding behind the scenes at your favorite daytime show. If you were to script the perfect example of hypocrisy, you couldn't do much better than what unfolded on The View that day. Joy Behar, a host who regularly champions feminism and slams sexism, became the unlikely perpetrator of a textbook sexist attack. Her target? Caroline Leavitt, a young conservative woman making waves in politics. Instead of addressing Leavitt's arguments, Behar reduced her to a mere object, declaring she was probably put in there because she's a 10. The irony was deafening. Here was The View, a show that postures as a defender of women, resorting to the very kind of superficial, appearance-based judgment they claim to fight against. This wasn't just a bad joke, it was a moment that ripped through The View's carefully constructed image, revealing a deeply problematic double standard.
Let's talk about the fact that Democrats have been labeling President Trump a to democracy for the better half of 10 years. Let's talk about how they have compared him to one of the worst mass in the history of the world, and that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden weaponized the court system and the justice system in this country against Donald Trump in an attempt to imprison him. He sat through a courthouse for 7 weeks this past year, and the Democrats were hoping he would go to jail for it. That is real political that has led to 2 heinous attempts on President Trump's life that, by the grace of God, he was able to escape, and he is here with us today. So yes, President Trump knows a little bit about political because he's experienced it himself. And talking about the tragic realities of war that Liz Cheney and her father Dick Cheney have got this country into is not political. It's talking about the reality of the foreign conflicts that the Washington, D.C. establishment have sold out young Americans to for decades.
Yet, of course, after those attempted attempts on the former president's life, his opponents reached out to him and said they do not accept political. That has been a key difference. I do want to play you.
No, please. His opponents are saying to this very day the same rhetoric that led to those 2 attempts. The second attempted on President Trump's life echoed the sentiment that President Trump is a democracy. And if you're a deranged lunatic and you're mentally ill, you will believe that lie, and yes, you will take political like we have seen in 2 instances against President Trump. Last week, Tim Walz and Kamala Harris said that everyone who showed up to President Trump's rally at Madison Square Garden was a That's despicable, dangerous, divisive rhetoric that is spewed by the Democrat Party every single day. And I'm so sick and tired of the media pointing the finger at Donald Trump and saying that he is sowing division in this country. He is not. The media is for pushing hoaxes like the one that you all pushed today, and the Democrat Party is for pushing lies about him. But the good news is Americans don't buy it. And that's why today in 2024, President Trump is more popular than he has been since 2016, because people don't trust the media and they're not buying the Harris campaign's closing argument that he's some great to our democracy, because they lived under him for 4 years as president, and our democracy and our country was stronger than it is.
Forget just issuing a statement. Caroline Leavitt's team is playing hardball. They understand the power of the legal threat, and they're using it strategically to put maximum pressure on The View and ABC. Behind the scenes, you can bet lawyers are involved, sending strongly worded letters and making it clear that legal action is a very real possibility if demands aren't met. What are those demands? Potentially a public apology, on-air retraction, or even more. Leavitt's team isn't just looking for a slap on the wrist, they're aiming for accountability and a clear message that The View can't just smear conservative women without consequence. This isn't just about a lawsuit, it's a calculated power move designed to force The View to reckon with the gravity of their words and actions. The moment that segment ended, panic buttons were slammed at The View and ABC. Producers went into overdrive, desperately trying to control the narrative and minimize the fallout. Emergency meetings were called, frantic phone calls were made to lawyers and PR teams. The usual production schedule was thrown out the window as the entire focus shifted to damage control. Were segments being re-edited? Were apologies being drafted? Were hosts being coached on what to say or not to say? The carefully constructed image of The View as a smooth, opinionated talk show was shattered, replaced by the frantic reality of a production team scrambling to contain a PR disaster spiraling out of control. Behind the cameras, it was a scene of pure, unadulterated chaos as The View tried to grapple with the mess they'd created.
She said something yesterday that really pissed me off. And that was, she said, there will be no wokeness here.
Oh, yeah.
Let me explain something to you. Because without that wokeness, you might not have that job.
Yeah.
Because women were not invited to that table. Mm-hmm. Women were not invited to many tables in this nation. The reason we fought and busted our behinds to make sure that you didn't have to worry about this. And now to hear you talk about it and to hear anybody talk about the wokeness was put in place for a reason. Because black people couldn't get into colleges. Because women could not get into the colleges they wanted to go to. This is all women. Yeah. See, this is not black, Asian women. This is all women. Women were not invited to this party. It was a man's world, and we busted our asses to make sure that this was a person's world. So please stop using that phrase and talk about, because you don't understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. You're saying about yourself that, you know, hey, that's a terrible thing to be. It's not a terrible thing to be. That's why we fought. That's what we were fighting for, so that you could stand in that podium, so that Catherine Jean-Pierre could stand at that podium. So women of all kinds of colors and ilks, wherever they came from, whatever their belief system was, they had the opportunity to bust down that door.
At ABC, the reaction wasn't just panic, it was a cold, hard assessment of the damage to their brand and their bottom line. Advertisers were reportedly getting nervous, social media was ablaze with calls for boycotts, and the network's carefully cultivated image was taking a serious hit. Forget begging for mercy in a literal sense, ABC's panic manifested as a strategic scramble to contain the fallout and protect their assets. Were they calculating the financial cost of a lawsuit versus the cost of a public apology? Were they assessing the long-term damage to The View's viewership and advertiser appeal? For ABC, this wasn't about emotions, it was about business survival. The network's panic was driven by the very real threat to their reputation and their financial stability, forcing them into a high-stakes game of damage control on a massive scale. It's almost unbelievable how spectacularly The View managed to undermine their own message. For years, they've lectured, they've scolded, they've positioned themselves as the arbiters of feminist virtue, and then, in a single moment, they completely contradicted everything they supposedly stand for. Joy Behar's sexist remark wasn't just offensive, it was profoundly self-destructive. It handed ammunition to their critics, it alienated viewers who genuinely believed in their feminist messaging, and it revealed a stunning lack of self-awareness. The irony is almost painful. In their rush to dismiss a conservative woman, The View deployed the very tactics they claimed to despise, effectively shattering their own carefully crafted feminist facade from the inside out. They didn't just stumble, they took a sledgehammer to their own credibility. In the aftermath of the View debacle, a fascinating shift occurred. Karoline Leavitt became something of a public heroine. Viewers across the political spectrum, even those who disagreed with her politics, recognized the unfairness of the attack and admired her powerful response. Sympathy poured in, support surged, and Leavitt was vindicated in the eyes of many. The View tried to tear her down, but they inadvertently built her up. This wasn't about spin or strategy, it was about genuine public sentiment turning in her favor. Leavitt emerged from the controversy stronger, more respected, and with a significantly expanded base of support. In a strange twist, The View's attempt to diminish her backfired spectacularly, transforming a moment of attack into a moment of profound public vindication and career triumph for Karoline Leavitt.